There was a lot of things that we learned from the youth retreats. I personally felt spiritually renewed. I was able to kind of take a breath. I was able to spend some time together with each other, which is kind of hard. Which is kind of hard with working with youth. There was a lot of things we learned. A lot about this upcoming generation. Besides, they're really messed up and it's all their fault. But this generation, we need to support them. Because if we don't, then we're more worse off than what we are before. And they're from 23 years old to 8 years old. They're all about themselves and self-reliance. But they really need a friend, a mentor, and a peer. Someone to say, hey, this is what's going on. They need an ear. Because yes, they're connected through social media, but they're the most loneliest bunch of people we've ever had. We were talking to a lot of youth pastors, youth leaders, just kind of seeing what's going on. And to be honest with you, we weren't alone with what was going on. We were all having the same issues, the same challenges on reaching them. They're a very private generation. They love to multitask, but they're relationally poor. They're more likely to be lonely, even though they have tons of friends. This generation is currently 25% of the population, which shocked me. 63% of that generation, Z, is white. 1 of 8 will identify as non-heterosexual, which is pretty high. They're career-driven, and the suicide rate for boys is up 30%. Some of the stuff we learned, even though some people thought we were just kind of hanging out on the beach, getting a suntan. I'm still white. At least I have hair. Sorry, I had to. We covered gender identity. They believe that their gender is based on what they feel, not biology that God sent out. Depression, suicidal thoughts, the generation, how to relate to them, other generations, setting goals in ministry, divorce. There's a lot of divorce going on. Broken homes, women in ministry, reaching them, and topics that are happening in our world. One thing I really learned, and I've heard it from Pastor Rich constantly, but it kind of finally clicked. Ministry is all about relationships. Anyone can hit him in the head with the Bible, but you have to do it with love. We need to get to know the kids and their parents and other peers. They gave us I'm not kidding, 4 pages of resources, front and back. 4 handouts, but yeah, there's a lot of resources. We're kind of looking through that list and seeing what would help us. They're facing more anxiety, depression, and they're growing up younger because their parents are not raising them. They're deciding what their career is going to be at 12 years old, 12 to 15. I don't know about you guys, but I didn't decide I want to be a deli clerk at 12 years old. The key to this is we need to help grow our church and help our world to reach them to the level with the biblical standpoint. We have to focus on the resurrection and power of Jesus Christ and show them that you are a sinner, but we all are, and Jesus wipes that clean. This goes back to what Tony Webb said about gathering people. We need to get out of our bubble. Kind of poke that bubble. In addition, all of us, we were able to network a lot of youth workers. So many people from Pennsylvania, Ohio. But there was one thing that Ed Lewis said, and I definitely am going to steal. We need to have God talk. We don't need to be afraid to say, hey, I go to church and I believe in God. Or I have friends and they are Christian friends. Our world is actively taking God out of the equation very fast. We need to keep working with our youth and getting new believers, as that's what we are commanded to do.
One of the main themes we talked about this week was gathering and evangelism. We talked about how to evaluate our ministries, both youth and adult ministries. We also talked about setting goals for our ministries. So learning about these things is all well and good. What good does it do us if we don't implement them into our current ministries? It does us no good. It's just time for us to go hang out with other youth workers. So let's start with the evaluation. What is our mission? What is our mission? We see that in Matthew 28, 19 and 20, Mark 16, 15, and Acts 1:8. We're told to go to the ends of the earth to find new believers. There are 4 things we need to look at when we're evaluating our ministry. Reaching. Are we talking to people in our community? Are we telling them who Jesus is? Teaching. Are we teaching people to have those relationships? Are we teaching people to go out and reach people in their community? Coaching. Are we equipping people to be able to go do it? Developing. Are we developing new leaders? In the church in America, 87% of ministry is done at teaching. That leaves a large gap in the reaching, the coaching, and the developing. We live in a broken society. It was repeated this past week. If we do not have the broken, the hurting, the depressed, divorced, gay, and the addicts in our congregation, we are not doing our jobs as followers of Christ. If we're not doing our jobs as followers of Christ, what does that say about us? It should tell us that if we aren't doing our job, we have no passion. It means we have stopped passionately following, chasing after God. Some of you have heard us talking about the book called Growing Young, written by Kara Powell, Brad Griffin, and Jake Mulder. We have recently challenged my dad to read it as well. We had 2 mini sessions on Growing Young while we were at the Youth Workers Retreat. We focused mostly on empathy with the next generation. This book is a wonderful resource that I hope to utilize further in our ministry. With that said, I do have a challenge for our elders. Chuck, Butch, if you'd come up here.
Just right now.
It was left out. I have a copy for each of you.
It's a hot book, I'll tell you what.
It is. I have a copy. Yep. Brian and I would like to challenge you. As leaders, read this book so that you are prepared to help our congregation in the pursuit of growing young. There is one caveat. You have until June 3rd.
That long?
Yep. That's 10 weeks.
Yeah, that's way long. You can do that.
I was told that you needed longer than 6 weeks.
Chuck, we were going to give you 2 weeks, like we got.
We tried it in 8 days. Once you've finished, we want you to come and tell us what you learned from the book.
Okay.
Okay?
Do that.
You guys maybe...
Challenge accepted. Yeah.
Okay. The other thing we discussed this week was goals. One of the sessions we went to discussed setting goals and their importance. This was led by a businessman who works for multi-million-dollar companies. While it sounds like it'd be boring, it was fascinating. So let me ask you this. Where do you want us to be this time next year? Where do you guys want us to be this time next year? Yes. Yes.
Praising God, stairs
Okay. Here's my challenges. We need to pray for each other, as in everybody in the congregation. We all need prayer warriors. Brian is going to pass around some pieces of paper and some pencils. I want you guys to write your name on the piece of paper. And then he also has a basket. Put your piece of paper folded in that basket. Okay. What we're going to do is, once we have all the names back in the basket, you are going to pick one name. You are going to pray for this person for the next 10 weeks until the elders are done reading Growing Young. You will pray for that person's spiritual health and for their ministry. That's just part 1. So once we finish that, I will continue on to part 2. All right. Now, honey, if you will mix that up a little bit and then start passing that around again. I want you to grab one name. You are going to pray for that person for the next 10 weeks. Now on to part 2. We need to talk more to people. We need to invite people. I want you to talk to one new person a week. Just one. Just one. We need to invite more people. Each week, when we come in, I want you to share those names.
Get yourself, let me know.
I want us to share those names that we talked to this each week. You only have to do one, and then we're going to pray together. We're going to come up here and we're going to pray. No, not everybody. We will pray. Yes. So let me finish with asking one last question. Why are we doing what we are doing? The answer to that question should be the motivation for us all to go out and share what we know about our God to the world.